No sleep,
Tell
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn.
So,
Yeah.
so
Get out of the way, hippie.
you Brooklyn hippie. Yeah. So it's a septic shock road trip with me, Clive Davis, and him.
Ron Scott. Hello, everybody. Hello, welcome back. Thanks for joining us.
And we're on our Brooklyn leg of our New York City section of the septic shock road trip.
Just a quick question. Are we ever leaving New York State?
Not yet. No.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
Never leaving. We're just going to stay in New York.
We're staying in Brooklyn for our next episode. We're specifically going down to not Staten Island.
Coney Island?
Yes, Coney Island.
Okay.
So our next film will be a Coney Island. We're getting more specific until we're like double bill set in someone's apartment.
They're going to be just 34th Street movies, and
But anyway, we're staying in Brooklyn. We're going to Coney Island next time. But for now, we're in the larger Brooklyn area. 2 films set in Brooklyn. Our first one, The Sentinel from 1976, is a bit like when we did Wolfen, for example. This is slightly outside our remit because the kind of idea is to go for more sort of regional filmmaking, kind of grassroots, whereas this is a proper big studio release.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it had a much bigger cast than I was expecting from one of these movies.
Holy shit! So. Yeah, stars. Yeah. I mean, maybe not so much for young people now, but yeah.
But I was like, holy fuck! That person too. Well, I was like, as the credits were rolling, I was like, oh, I kind of perked up. I was like, most of these movies, I go in really like, okay, here we go. I have to kind of steel myself for them. But this one, I was like, hey, it's got that. Oh, really? Chris Sarandon? Oh, Ava Gardner? Oh, wow, look at John Carradine. Oh,
yes, we're old
Burgess
enough.
Meredith. Oh, great.
We recognize these people, but
yeah. Jerry Orbach, Beverly D'Angelo. Great. Okay, I know these people. Tom Berenger.
Yeah, so this is directed and produced Michael Winner from a novel by the producer, Jeffrey Kovitz, which is a novel I've not read. I'm guessing you haven't either, Ron?
No.
Right. Okay. So, so starring Christina Rains as a model in New York City, who's married to it turns out quite a crooked lawyer, right? As played by Chris Sarandon,
right?
In a role originally meant for Martin Sheen, apparently.
Oh, really?
Who Michael Winner wanted, but the way he explains it, Martin Sheen had recently done some TV or something, and it was in those days where, unlike now, weirdly enough, TV was, a sign that you weren't making it in the movies, right? So, and Chris Sarandon had just been nominated for an Oscar or for something or other. So he wasn't Michael Winner's first choice. Michael Winner is not very keen on Chris Sarandon because I listened to the commentary.
So because Michael Sheen had done TV, he was out from doing the studio picture.
Yeah. The other producers felt like, well, we'd rather go with Chris Sarandon because he's recently got nominated for an Oscar, and Martin Sheen's slumming it in TV.
Oh, I see.
How times have changed, right? Now they're.
I will say, just on the topic of Chris Sarandon, I can never watch Chris Sarandon and not see him as Prince Humperdinck.
Who's Prince Humperdinck?
From The Princess Bride.
Oh, okay, right, okay.
Yeah, so that's I like. No matter what movie he is, no matter what role he plays, he's always Prince Humperdinck for me.
It's inconceivable for you to see him as anyone else.
Yeah. Yes.
Right.
But that's Wallace Shawn. That's
no. I know that. But
yeah. So
always an excuse to do a Wallace Shawn.
Right. Yeah. Oh, by the way, also the one I was saving the best for last. Christopher Walken and Jeff Goldblum also in this one.
Right, yeah. Chris Walken, unfortunately, not really having that much.
Yeah, he had no lines or like one line or something.
Plays second fiddle to Eli Wallach, right? He's his partner, the cop.
Yeah, he's just the strong silent lights type standing in the back, where he's like the heavy.
Eli Wallach's having a good time, though. He's kind of enjoying himself, isn't he? Everyone seems to be kind of quite enjoying themselves.
Jeff Goldblum was kind of playing himself with like his shirt and button down, taking the pictures of the models and stuff. He's like the photographer.
I was kind of surprised actually how at this point Jeff Goldblum didn't sound very Jeff Goldblum. He didn't have the Jeff Goldblum speech pattern.
Yeah, yeah, right, yeah.
He sounded. I was wondering if he was like dubbed by someone else or something. Right?
Yeah, maybe he's just still finding his voice.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, Christina is going to Cassandra, and she's looking for a place to live. Ends up renting this building from Ava Gardner. Speaking of big names, yes, so she moves in. There's a blind priest on the. We're getting into spoilers here, by the way, as well. And this actually is a film I mean, if you're going to watch it, it's you're probably going to have more fun if you have no idea what's going to happen. So I would caution you to listen to this before seeing it.
Because it definitely doesn't go where you think it's going to go. That's for sure.
No, unless you just heard two complete tools on a YouTube video tell you about it.
Yeah, right.
So
pause the video now, go watch it, and then come back. Right?
Yeah. Or just not come back.
Or just no, Clive, come back. Yeah.
We're worth it, honest. And there's a weird old blind priest who stares out the window, even though he's blind. Turns out to be played by John Carradine. She ends up befriending all these crazy people, weirdos who live in the apartment, including Burgess Meredith as a kind of
who's having a blast in this movie.
Yeah.
This would have been the same year as Rocky, wouldn't it have been? 77?
76. Yeah.
And it would have been right around the same time, right? They would have filmed it.
Yeah.
So he's like couldn't think of two different characters for Bruce to play than Mickey and
much more
Mr. Chazen, Charles Chazen.
Much more camp in this one, isn't he?
Yeah.
With his cat and his parakeet and
mincing
around. I guess he's supposed to be like an old theatrical type or something.
Yeah.
And and all these other weirdos and like there's a early appearance from a naked Beverly D'Angelo, who openly masturbates in front of our protagonist.
Who doesn't speak, she's a mute.
Right.
Of some kind, and then just has the neighbor over for tea and then just masturbates which I quite enjoyed that scene because I thought it was quite amusing because I was like, how would I react if I went over to someone's house for a coffee and they just started masturbating in front of me? Because it was quite realistic. Good for Christina Rain. She played it really kind of like just trying to like politely turn away.
Right. Well, you never blink. You never blink an eyelid when I jerk off in front of you.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's because I asked you to do it. So.
Yeah, well, you're used to it by now, is that right? You're like Harvey Keitel in Barton. You're like, show me how you suck a guy's cock.
So yeah, are you glad you came back now?
See, high quality, sophisticated film chat.
Right, yeah.
But that's that's one of the handful of kind of very Michael Winner scenes. So Michael Winner is kind of one of those interesting personalities who obviously most famous for like the Death Wish films, right? And some of the and more famous in the UK more than a filmmaker for having a restaurant column in the Daily Mail or something for years and years, and being a bit of a raconteur who turns up on talk shows with his cigar and regales. He's like a Peter Ustinov type of character, and seemingly quite charming, but the more you find out, apparently is a little fucking rat shit of a man who apparently reducing Christina Rains to tears on the set of this film. And
really?
A proper little I was recently watching, there's a documentary called Hollywood Bulldogs about British stuntmen in Hollywood, and there's a whole section on the making of Death Wish 3, which might be my favorite of the Death Wish films because it's so bonkers. And have you ever seen Death Wish 3?
I don't think
That's
so.
The one where a gang is like terrorizing a tenement, so all the old, actually a bit like the old people in the Sentinel, kind of fight back. It's like geriatrics versus the street gang, and it's just a hoot. It's really over the top and violent and ridiculous. But apparently on the set of that film, like, Michael Winner was really, really irresponsible and reckless and responsible for like stuntmen getting injured and stuff. And just,
really? Okay.
Just a real, the ends justify the means on set.
Right, yeah.
Tyrant, But makes these kind of films, these trashy films, which are sometimes kind of fun. And there are a few choice Michael Winner the more hysterical moments of the film are, I think, Michael Winner like doing what he does best, right? Where it's just totally overwrought and over the top and very campy as well.
Yeah, very campy. Yeah. But I don't know if you got this, but I at first, like the first 30, 45 minutes, I thought it was really similar to Polanski's The Tenant, with like
that's interesting.
With her moving into this kind of strange old house with like, lots of stairs, and she lives upstairs, and there's all these kind of weird neighbors and stuff. And then you're not really sure what's happening, and and they're not really there. Maybe they're actually dead. You're the only person that lives in this building. Everyone else has always lived there. I was like, oh, this is kind of a little bit like that. It's less good than less well done than The Tenant. But I was like, oh, okay, it's kind of The Tenant. I thought, and then I looked at it, it's around the same time, so I thought maybe it was like an homage to The Tenant, and then it just went left turn.
It's like the McDonald's Tenant or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like.
But that said, it's not boring.
No.
Even on this rewatch, actually, this was one of the ones I wasn't that keen on, but I couldn't find anything else for Brooklyn. Oh, fuck, okay. And that's why I dragged out this kind of major, because I wanted to team up, I wanted to double bill, but
if you couldn't find anything for Brooklyn, then why are we doing 2 shows here?
Shut up, Rob.
Gotcha.
Yeah, you got me. So anyway, because the other 2 are Coney Island films, Rob.
You said we're staying in Brooklyn. You said.
Yeah, which Coney Island's in.
Oh, it's in Brooklyn. Okay.
Yeah. But they're specifically Coney Island.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
You could have just done those then.
Shut up, Rob.
Or just one.
So yeah, as you said, it turns out, there's no one else actually living in the building. It's just you. And then the big thing is it turns out the apartment is actually built. It's on the gateway to hell itself, right? So it always needs a guardian. Yeah, and like you said, apropos of nothing really. At the end, suddenly all these freaks come in, right?
Like, where did they come from? Like, they're the demons. They're the
real
demons,
ones,
right?
Not
they were. Yeah, I thought so. I wasn't sure about that. I was going to ask you about this because they looked like they were like they didn't look like special effects. They looked like they were proper, genuine, like people with disabilities.
Guy and
and like the guy with the elephant, the elephant man kind of thing. Right? So I was like, those look like they just found like real people with deformities and put them in this movie as demons.
Pretty much.
Never mind taking people who already have low self-esteem and making it even lower, saying you're a demon now, right? Because of what you look like.
It doesn't play like that. You don't necessarily think, oh, demons. You just think, fucking hell, the circus is invaded or something.
Yeah.
It's because it happens so fast and out of nowhere, right? It reminded me, there's another film from the 60s called House of the Damned, where similarly a woman there's like creepy things happen in this woman's house through the whole film. And then at the end of the film, she just goes down to the basement and discovers all these circus freaks living in her basement.
Yeah.
What?
Why is it?
Yeah. So I mean, you know what? This is kind of fun. The Sentinel.
It was more fun than I kind of expected. It was definitely not what I expected. Like, as I said, okay, I kind of see where this is going. It's kind of going The Tenant. It's going to be like a creepy and atmospheric, and everyone's really dead. What's happening? But then it was like, what the fuck is going on? What is happening here? Right. So I guess so. And I guess quick summary is that the guy, the blind priest that just sits in the window, he's the sentinel, keeping watch over the mouth of hell, keeping the demons from coming in. And there's always a sentinel there to make sure that the demons don't overrun the world. And the thing is that this new woman is now going to be the new sentinel because he's dying, and so she's going to take over, and she has to kill herself if she kills herself, then she goes to hell. So they're trying to get her to kill herself so that she doesn't become the Sentinel. It got a little murky there, right? So
to be a Sentinel. Yeah, it's a bit of a fudge.
Yeah. It got a little. Yeah, it's a little. Yeah, the plot got a little murky there, but whatever. It doesn't really matter, I guess.
But
right?
but as this kind of I don't know what category you would put it, like glossy trash, right? Like
yeah.
It's kind of fun. I thought I would have a bit of a hard time watching it the second time, but I kind of got quite. Like I said, it's not boring, and even though I knew what was coming, it kind of kept me. I mean, the performances are kind of quite good, right? And everyone seems to be enjoying themselves. Like, it's strange, all these talented people, and Christina Reynes is pretty good. They've all kind of. Christina Reynes is actually surprisingly good, because I didn't know much about her, and she's an attractive woman as well. But she's quite good at reacting to things. Like she does quite a few like eye rolling things in response.
The scene that I mentioned before with Beverly D'Angelo, she was quite realistic in her discomfort and just trying to be polite but look away, but not sure how to react in the situation. It was good. Well, good for her.
So it's an odd one. It's not like a full on like, oh, you must see this movie or a recommendation or anything, but it's you can see why people, because I know some people who really like this film, and I think I get it, because especially if you'd have seen this first run in the theater or something and you had no idea what was coming, I can imagine it must have made quite an impression on you, because you'd have been like,
right, what I guess
now? Like,
what's happening?
Yeah. So it's a I don't know exactly what more to say about it. It's a bit of a campy kind of high gloss. Maybe one to program if you're doing a Michael Winner retrospective. Put this on there with Death Wish 3.
It was good fun. I wouldn't say don't watch it. It wasn't like a chore to watch. So it was okay. Yeah.
Put it on with. There's another Michael Winner film which I quite enjoyed, which is really trashy as well, called Scream for Help from 1984, which is similarly kind of overwrought and ridiculous and trashy, but with good production values, and a kind of a classy kind of, in a way, classy trash. Yeah. Speaking of trash. See what good, here we go. Now
good segue.
I've been dying to talk to you about this. I think for a while, because we're talking street trash, 1986. So early on in our friendship, when we were getting to know you, getting to know all about, and we used to sing that all the time, hand in hand. I remember the subject of street trash coming up, and me being at first delighted to discover that Ron was actually familiar with street trash. It was actually one of the films that we had overlap, right? Like, right. And then being horrified to discover that Ron hated street trash, which was always one of my favorites, one of my gems of my video discovery days. And Darren, friend of this parish as well, me and him kind of discovered street trash. And
really? Okay.
Yeah, we were both big fans of street trash. And then horror of horrors, Ron doesn't like it at all. So
okay.
Yeah.
Shall I give you my history with this movie?
Yes, please do, and also update us. And then or do we want to do a quick rundown of the plot?
Yeah. Okay, yeah, sure.
Do you want to do that?
I'll try. I'm not sure that the plot is that clear, but yeah, essentially there's street trash, which is basically a bunch of homeless people and bums and basically the low class Brooklynites, right? Who live on the streets and do bad stuff. There's a lot of rape. And then there's and basically the essential the horror element of this movie is they this alcoholic store, this liquor store owner finds a case of old wine, like 60-year-old wine, in the wall of his kind of cellar.
Right. Real rock gut, right?
Yeah. So he decides to take it out and just sell it for $1 a bottle to the trash that come in to buy alcohol at his store. And
it turns out that for $1.
RoboCop. Nice. Okay. And then turns out that it's like this like super fast working acid venom poison that makes you turn into paint. Right.
Yes, people explode and melt.
Explode and melt and all die in sort of all sorts of gruesome ways. It's like and so there's several.
Most famously, the guy who melts down the toilet, right? Which would have been
the toilet, and that's the front. That's the box cover, right?
Poster in the box. Yeah, that's the thing. I remember first seeing that on a video shelf and thinking I'd found the film I'd always wanted, the film of my dreams, right? And then eventually seeing it, and it's kind of living up to it for me.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
And other than that, it's basically just a bunch of like random. I don't think there's really much of a plot. There's just sort of like random. There's like some gangsters and something going on with that, and then there's this mad dog guy who kind of this really tough ex-Vietnam vet who kind of rules the junkyard and has.
That's the geographic focus. Is this
the
Wrecker's Yard, right?
Right.
Which was owned by director Jim Moreau's father, which is why they got to shoot there. And so all the characters kind of interact around basically in this junkyard, right? And they're all. I think what I appreciate about this movie is almost every character is entirely unlikable, which like they go out of their way. They're all horrible.
It's really like it reminded me a little bit of that movie we watched, the Golden Glove, where it was just like it's so like just grotty and like it just they you have like a little bit of throw up at the back of your throat the entire movie. Right. Like you're just like it's so distasteful to watch.
Yeah,
like everyone's just dirty and disgusting.
They've gone out their way, right, to prod the audience, like
just to be the lowest, like trash, basically, literally street trash, right?
I mean, just for context, there's a sequence apropos of nothing at all, which is played for comedy. There's a game of catch with a severed cock,
right?
And then there's a swerves off into it, like you said. There's this gang rape sequence, which is kind of played for comedy at the beginning,
for laughs, which was like they carry her off and like and then she like turns up naked on the beach, like the dead body is like naked, like on the kind of the shoreline, and this big fat kind of like pervert guy who runs the junkyard finds her and it's with this sort of jaunty won't movie music. Oh, I'm gonna go rape a dead body. Right. Looks like I got gonorrhea from it. Oh I got it's like it was really.
They've got they're deliberately. They're trolling the audience, right? And if you're in on the joke, then that's fine. But obviously, I can't imagine anyone getting their nose bent out of shape by this. You'd have to be really on the lookout for wanting to take offense, right? You'd have to be a
right. Yeah. I don't think they would make this movie today.
Yeah, I don't use this term. It's not a term I throw around, but just for what I mean is like it's not a film for what some people call snowflakes, right? It's You'd have to be deliberately on the lookout to be offended, I think, because it's so tongue in cheek and obviously pushing buttons, right? And there's a few, like racial epithets and things as well thrown away around, and everyone, it's deliberately just like poking you with it, that's why it was designed. Anyway, so when did you first see this, Ron? What did you make of it? And has your opinion changed?
So
most want to know.
Well, so I first saw this many years ago back in Canada with my friends, and my friends and I, we like to kind of find and watch kind of low budget horror movies or like straight to video movies. We didn't have the video nasties, and we didn't have quite the access to movies that you and your friends seem to have had. We basically just had to find whatever's on the video shelf, and a lot of it we were kind of like, man, we don't really want to watch that kind of thing. So we were a little more discerning, I guess, in our taste, I guess, really. So, but sometimes we'd find something, oh, that looks like really good. Like that's the people that I found like Brain Dead, or stuff like that, right? So
Basket Case as well, right? Was a
Basket Case, Basket Case, Brain Dead, those ones, right? So so this one was one of the ones that we found, and unlike Basket Case and Brain Dead, which we all loved and became like a classic favorite of all of ours, it still is. This was the one that I was the sole dissenter on, where we watched this movie. I remember vividly watching it in my friend's basement, all of us sitting around watching it, and everybody just loving it, and me just like hating every minute of this movie. Right?
What was it about it?
So, I think what it was I thought it was kind of boring. I mean, like there was the, and I think as you just said, it was like the poking, but if you're in on the joke, I think I wasn't in on the joke. You know what I mean? So I think my friends all got the joke, which leads to think that I should have also been on the joke. But I remember just being really bored by most of this movie, that even though that a lot of there's a lot of filler in this movie. I mean, you got to be honest, right? So I thought the special effects were fine, but that there was, I mean, all I remember of this movie was the melting and the penis, right? And the severed penis. I mean, that was all I remembered. The rest of it, I had no memory of whatsoever. I just remember finding it, being kind of bored by it. And I think I just this sort of became my standard for like if people ask me what's the worst movie I've ever seen, that was the one I remembered liking the least. So that's the one I just became my pet answer as my.
Because the bored thing surprises me, just because you're right. It is. There's a lot of filler and it's very episodic, but there's always something happening. Like there's always something borderline offensive happening. So bored kind of surprises me a little bit.
I'm not sure what my mindset of the day I was watching it was, but for some reason I just was not that into this movie, which was strange because I was watching it in the setting that and my friends were all enjoying it and still counted as like one of their favorites, and I'm sort of famous for being the one person that didn't like this movie, right? So so it's so they all kind of we still bring that up a little bit, like but and so. Yeah, so I don't know. I just wasn't that interested in it. I think that was just, I found it just really distasteful, and I think I just didn't get it. And I was kind of like, so that's sort of, I never, and I know I didn't have access to a lot of really, really bad movies, or I don't think I watched a lot of really, really bad movies, so I didn't really have much to compare it to. So compared to the other stuff we were watching, it was, I used it as my answer for like the worst movie I'd ever seen, right? So I was like, this is my least favorite movie. This is the movie I hate most,
right?
Because it was just an easy one to say.
Yes.
And I never revisited it ever since then. Sorry?
Clearly the wrong answer to that question.
well, certainly after knowing you, it is now, right? So, so you've certainly opened my eyes to a whole world of shit that I didn't know even existed, right? So
you're welcome.
So I watched this. So I rewatched this again just for the second time ever in my life since many, many years ago. My friends, I think we rewatched it several times, but I don't think I've ever rewatched it. And we were like, oh, okay, here we go, street trash. Okay, I'll give it another shot. Like, here we go, rewatch for this show. And now I think I have to preface this by saying that I was watching this at the tail end of watching a whole bunch of other movies for our other podcasts, which is called The Magic Morning Wood, which is an audio only podcast. iTunes if you want, right? So please check it out. And we were just doing the Howling series, all 8 movies in the Howling series. And if anyone watching this has ever seen the Howling series, they are fucking terrible movies. They're really, really boring and really bad. And they gave me like a real appreciation for what is a really bad movie. So going into this movie, the 10th movie of like 9 other really terrible or 8 other really terrible movies, I was kind of like, I was hoping for something that I was like, okay, here's the last of the terrible movies. And so anyway, watching it with these fresh eyes, it allowed me to enjoy it a little bit better because, because I'd gone through the Clive Turner Howling movies, which were so unbearable to watch, that I wanted to peel my eyeballs. So actually I was like, oh, okay, I can see why people like this movie again. I can see why Clive liked this movie. I can remember why my friends liked this movie. There was parts to enjoy, and I still found it really distasteful. And like
but it's
a little bit
supposed
like
to, isn't it?
made me feel like gross to watch a lot of
Yeah.
the kind of thing, right? But I got the joke more this
You
time,
get
right?
it now.
I had more context, and certainly is not my low bar movie anymore, right? So that's for sure.
It's interesting. I remember reading in one of Lloyd Kaufman's books, I think, that the number one film that they hated over at Trauma was Street Trash, to the point that he doesn't even write the name. He says, I can't even write the name. It rhymes with wheat rash, right? That's how we described it. And okay. I understand why, because basically Street Trash is a trauma movie made well. Like, because it's a really well made. Jim Moreau famously went on to become a Steadicam operator on like big films like Terminator 2 and stuff. And I think it's a weird, because I think it's as much as a Jim Moreau film, it's as much the writer producer Roy Frumkes, who made a documentary actually. Well, he famously made a documentary about the making of Dawn of the Dead called Document of the Dead, which took ages to come out. But he also made a documentary about Street Trash called The Meltdown Memoirs, which if you're a Street Trash fan, I quite recommend checking out. But yeah, so it's kind of like, I mean, trauma is one of those things where I like the idea of trauma. And I remember when I was reading the Lloyd Kaufman books, it made me, oh yeah, I really want to go back and then watching and like, oh fucking hell, like not many trauma films live up to, like, I think the first Toxic Avenger is a lot of fun. And there's bits and pieces, but I don't know if you've ever seen Trauma's War. I remember reading, like, James Gunn, of course, who started at Trauma, reading him talking about his enjoyment of Trauma's War, and really making me, oh yeah, I really want to watch Trauma's War, and because I'd never seen that one, and then I watched it, and it was just, oh fuck, this is please end. It was so headache-inducingly terrible.
I think the only one my friends and I ever saw of Trauma was Romeo and Juliet. I think we saw that one,
which is a pretty good
not
one,
bad, right? Not bad.
Yeah. So yeah, they have their moments, but I can see why they hate Street Trash, because it's kind of upstaged them, right? It's done,
right. Yeah.
It's taken all, because it really seems like a trauma film. I can understand why I think some people think of this as a trauma film. They remember
I see, okay,
as a trauma film. And of course, Pat Ryan, who's in it, was in trauma films, right? The fat guy,
right,
who was also in that weird movie Eat and Run, where he played an alien who lands in New York City and starts eating people. And so I kind of get why because they kind of upstaged them, right? Because this is because it is really well made. It has to be said.
Right.
I mean, it's a classy product in terms of the
I'd forgotten that the special effects are pretty decent. Like when the guys melt,
Jennifer Aspinall.
Yeah, at first, when I was kind of like, when I first thought it was like, I'm melting, right? So, but it looks good. I thought it was like, it looks like paint or whatever, but it looks really fun. Like it's really like properly disgusting, right? So
seeing it in HD as well is good. You really get to see everything pops, the colors. It's really well put together film. We probably should mention as well, another highlight of the film, I think, is James Lawrence, the star of Frankenhooker as well, who plays the doorman character, right? The young punk doorman.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
He's fucking great in this film. Like he brings that real kind of Brooklyn kind of attitude, right?
Right.
I think most of his stuff is ad-lib. I think. I think he might have been a stand-up comic, maybe. For a while.
Yeah, I can believe that. Yeah.
There's a brilliant bit where because the main gangster character is basically going to kill him, right? And he's like, and you said my wife stinks or something. Yeah, and what I meant is, yeah, she stinks of
beauty.
So good, so good. And
Yeah.
at the end, and the gangster drinks that, and he's kiss your dick is dripping down the stairs, all that stuff. James Lawrence is great in this, and I can see why. I'm guessing Frank Henenlotter saw him in this and then cast him in Frankenhooker, right?
I see.
He also made, if you watch the Meltdown Memoirs, they make reference to James Lawrence made, it's either a short film or a film that never got completed called Swirly, where he stars in it as a man who's just a giant ice cream cone. Which is kind of, you can find it on YouTube. It's kind of, it's not great, but it's a nice idea. It's a nice concept. And obviously James Lawrence is a interesting guy, right? So I think that's the other thing I always remember about Street Trash was James Lawrence in it, like kind of stealing the show, really. Yeah, so you enjoyed it this time, it seems.
Well, yeah, more than I did before the first time, that's for sure. It's yeah, I wouldn't say I love it as much as you or as much as my friends do, but it was yeah, I can see the appeal now, right? So, and it was not a slog. Yeah, so it wasn't difficult to get through.
Yeah. Did you laugh?
Yeah, a couple times. Yeah, there was a couple laughs. Yeah, I thought James Lawrence was funny, and yeah, I can't remember the couple other ones. A couple other ones I was kind of like, that makes me uncomfortable. Like especially there's so much rape, so much rape.
Well, yeah, or like sexual harassment,
sexual harassment, like
Jane Arakawa's character, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so the other thing I wanted to mention is that there's another film. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's called Slime City or The Slime.
No.
We're kind of around the same time, New York, another New York melt movie. And I think some of the same crew worked on both films. So I don't think The Slime or Slime City is as good as Street Trash, but if you're in the mood for more kind of low budget New York melt movie madness, you might want to check out Slime City, or aka The Slime it was called in the UK, which is kind of adjacent kind of melting fun.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. So Brooklyn.
That's Brooklyn.
Yeah, and there'll be more Brooklyn, specifically Coney Island, next time. Yeah, there we go. So
all right.
Until then, think of something witty to say, Ron. Go on.
You stink of ugliness. How's that?